Welcome to the Case for Movement series of the knee. For most of human history, movement wasn't the goal, it was the tool. Without movement, humans may become victim to their environment, whether it be by starvation or the inability to stay competitive. Fast forward to today, and the realities of the past seem to have been washed away. Most of us are protected in our homes. We can get tens of thousands of calories in under 500 steps, and most of us provide these luxuries by sitting at our desk jobs. Now, it's clear to me that we don't need movement to survive, but we need it to live. Why? Because we're clearly paying the price. So it's time we start making a case for movement. Now, in the last episode, I mentioned how the anatomy that we discussed was just one chapter within the story that is human capability. Now, I'd like to move to the next chapter, the knee. The structures that I'd like to go over in the knee are the position sense or proprioceptors, as well as the structures that maximize the efficiency of the knee. One of the concepts we touched in the last episode is that efficient movers are the best movers. So we're going to take a look at that, and in part 2 of this video, we're going to look at the consequence of not moving, specifically at the level of the knee. So let's start by going over our proprioceptors, our position sense structures, and these include our Golgi tendon organs, our muscle spindles, and our joint receptors. Every joint has the capacity to gain position sense within the body. But I want to start at the knee and talk about proprioceptors at the knee because it's one of our biggest joints. So it means that one of our biggest contributors to proprioceptive input. I want to illustrate the power of these proprioceptors by taking a look at a squat. Now, in this squat video, likely the person has a mirror in front of them, which is just another way that you can glean position sense. I want to show here that, it's clear that the hip, the knee, ankle, and any other joints that are contributing to this squat or the maintenance of squat form are working. But obviously, the knee here has a pretty significant impact on the position sense that's being collected. Because there's a mirror, this kind of all goes out the window. So what I want you to do is safely find a place where you can squat with your eyes closed. Likely you can still do it if you're capable of doing a squat with your eyes open. And the reason this is, or at least one of them, is because your knee proprioceptors are allowing your body to have this unconscious sensory map of where you are in space. Now, of course, the ankle and hip and other joints are responsible for creating this map, but the knee is a very big part of it. Now, this tells me that movement is so important to our survivability that we have this hidden failsafe, proprioception, that allows for us to glean position sense independent of eyesight. So without proprioception, we wouldn't be able to move. And I think we can take that one step further. Without proprioception, we would not be excellent movers. I'd like to isolate the knee a little bit more in this conversation of proprioception by discussing a study that was done by Mayfield and colleagues that looked at patients with hereditary sensory autonomic neuropathy type 3. It was not the primary objective of this study to look at these patients and the relationship with the proprioceptors of the knee. There was still this proposition that perhaps because there are diminished proprioceptive qualities within these patients at the level of the knee, that may have been what's causing the ataxic gait. Now, the only reason I'm bringing this up is because I think that this could allow for a pretty interesting visual representation of what it means to have compromised proprioceptors at the level of the knee. Just look up a video of ataxic gait and imagine for a moment that perhaps without our proprioceptors at the level of the knee, this could be the consequence. I just want to give a reminder that I am using this research a little bit out of context, so we can't say that definitively, but it could give you a better understanding of maybe what the impact of having or not having proprioceptors at the level of the knee could be. Now, it's my goal for these videos not just to share the anatomy and physiology that proves that we're inborn movers, but to help give you ideas and strategies to help maximize the anatomy and physiology that we talk about. So for proprioception, we talked about proprioception in the knee. It's not really possible to isolate knee proprioception in the context of training, but one thing that will certainly challenge the proprioceptors of your knee is hopping on a Bosu ball or some sort of wobble board. This is something that you could throw into your daily life either right when you wake up or right before you go to bed, and increasing your ability to map where you are in space independent of your eyesight, increasing the capacity for proprioceptors to work well is only going to help you move, whether it's to get better at running, get better at keeping up with your kids, whatever it is, it's going to be helpful. So hopping on a Bosu ball or some sort of wobble board during your training or right when you wake up or right before you go to bed, creating some sort of routine with this can only help. Now that we've talked about the proprioception at the level of the knee, I think it's important that we talk about the structures that allow for an increased efficiency at the level of the knee. In the last episode, we talked about how long tendons help with the efficiency at the level of the ankle because longer tendons, like our Achilles, has the capacity to store more elastic energy, which gives us that snap for any sort of sustained movement. Well, we have something similar happening in the knee, but it's a little bit different. So not only can long tendons increase our capacity to store elastic energy, they also act as really good buffers in really high force endeavors. So what do I mean by that, and why does it matter? Let's imagine a really high force movement endeavor, like a jump, for example. When we land from a jump, we know that we're forcing our knee extensors into an controlled eccentric contraction. Now, the knee extensors are slowly becoming lengthened, and the controlled lengthening allow for a slow and controlled landing. Right now, this is a lot of really quick force put onto the knee. So what are the tendons doing and why does it matter? Well, the tendons, I want you to imagine as black rope that takes on the initial impact that is the fall from a jump, right? This is actually shunting the force needed to be taken on by the knee extensors, the muscles, the contractile tissue. It's actually, some of the force is being shunted by the tendon. So some of that slack rope allows for some dissipation of force to take away some of the force needed by the muscle. This is another layer of maximizing efficiency within the knee. We are dissipating energy that would otherwise have to be taken on by the knee extensors. We're doing it in a non-contractile tissue like the patellar tendon. The same thing is happening when we're trying to jump. We just talked about the landing from a jump. Well, the same thing's happening when we're trying to actively jump. The tendon is taking some of that force that would be needed for that contraction, right? It's dissipating some of that energy, which ultimately is putting less demand on our knee extensors during the landing, during the jumping. Again, very important built-in passive efficiency. And the reason this is, it's proposed that without this tendon buffer, there would be more incidence of muscle injury as a result of really quick, high force impact movements like a jump. So we just talked about how long tendons, not only can it help increase the capacity for elastic energy, it can also increase or decrease the eccentric and concentric burden placed on any muscle at any given area, especially during these high force endeavors. As I mentioned before, it's my goal to not only tell you what anatomy helps us move, but how we can increase our ability to train these structures that we talk about in these videos. So how can we train our tendons? How can we increase the capacity for them to act as a buffer? Well, I think ultimately similar concept as we talked with proprioception, we need to stress these structures. In this case, we need to stress the tendons, increase their capacity to do their job efficiently, right? And so how can we do this? Well, I think that creating high force power output movements within our training is important. Some exercises that you could implement into your training that really embrace this power output that could potentially assist the capacity for your tendons to act as a buffer would be your medicine ball throws, your slow eccentric squats, where you really kind of take your time on the way down and really explode on the way up. You could also do sled pushes, sled pulls, anything really that you're recruiting maximum power output. So maximum muscular contraction in short periods of time, very explosive movements. Thanks for watching the case for movement of the knee, where we looked at the proprioceptors, the position sense structures that allow us to understand where we are in space. This helps for all sorts of movement. And we also talked about ways that maybe we could help train our proprioceptors to become even better at moving. We looked at the efficiency structures within the knee that allow us to maximize our ability to create really quick, high force production within our knee, whether it be our extensors or our flexors. We talked about how the tendons can dissipate some of the energy required by our contractile tissues, like our knee extensors or flexors. Ultimately, this helps with power output. We also talked about ways that we may be able to train these structures at the level of the knee to increase our power output. Once again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you at the next episode.